They said Chuka had a way with words, not the loud kind, not the politician's kind. His was softer, slower, dangerous, the kind that made you forget to think. He could look a woman in the eye and make her feel seen, truly seen, as if her entire life had been leading up to that conversation. By the time he was done, she would be laughing, trusting, and ready to do anything he asked. That was how he built his empire. Not with blood, not with sweat, but with hearts. He was married, of course. Amara, his wife of 7 years, believed in him with a loyalty that bordered on blindness. Every business trip, every late night, every new car he bought, she celebrated it as another fruit of his hard work. She didn't know that the investors behind her luxury handbags and weekend getaways were heartbroken women scattered across cities, women who thought they were building a future with him. But every con has an expiry date, and Chuka's came quietly, wearing red lipstick and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her name was Tommy. She appeared one afternoon at a business conference in Lagos, confident, magnetic, the kind of woman Chuka couldn't resist. They met over cocktails, and she laughed at all his jokes, touched his arm when she didn't need to, and told him he looked like someone who knew how to get what he wanted. Of course, he took the bait. That was his favorite line, his own reflection, served back to him. What Chuka didn't know was that Tommy was no random admirer. She had been sent by someone from his past, one of the many women he had drained and destroyed years ago. This time, the game wasn't to love him, it was to ruin him. Chuka Nwobi was the kind of man people either admired or envied. Sometimes both. He dressed like success itself, crisp shirts that still carried the scent of expensive cologne hours after he'd left the room, good cufflinks shaped like lions, and that calm, calculated confidence that made people assume he always knew what he was doing. But those who knew him well, which almost no one, understood that his confidence came from something darker: control. He liked to hold it, keep it, and never let anyone see him sweat. His wife, Amara, met him 8 years ago at a friend's wedding in Port Harcourt. She was 25 then, warm, curious, with laughter that came easily. Chuka had charmed her with quiet attention. He didn't talk about himself much, but he asked about her work, her dreams, her love for teaching. By the end of the evening, he had slipped into her world like he'd always belonged there. They married 2 years later, and at first, everything felt like a fairy tale. Chuka built businesses that seemed to bloom overnight: logistics, real estate, consulting. He bought Amara a car on their second anniversary and promised her a life of ease. Nwi Odogu, soft queen. She believed him. How could she not? But slowly, that fairy tale began to fade. Chuka became busier, his phone glued to his hand even during dinner, calls he couldn't take in front of her, business trips that stretched longer than planned. He had a way of turning questions into guilt. Don't you trust me, Amara? Is it a crime to want to build something for us? And each time, she backed down. At home, she tried to fill the silence with small things: cooking his favorite meals, keeping the house perfect, leaving little notes on his bedside. But Chuka was already slipping away, one lie at a time. When he did look at her, it was the kind of fondness you show in memory, something you once loved but have already outgrown. Still, Amara stayed, because love, she believed, was about patience, and she had plenty of it. But patience is useless against deceit, and deceit, in Chuka's world, was his daily bread. His clients, women across Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, were his real investors. He would whisper dreams of partnership, send fake documents, and charm money out of their accounts under the guise of love. When the money came in, he would vanish, block numbers, delete chats, disappear. And in that disappearance, another woman's heart would quietly break until Tommy came along. She wasn't like the others. She didn't fall too fast, didn't cling, didn't ask for promises. Instead, she let him chase. And that was Chuka's weakness. He loved the hunt more than the prize. To him, Tommy was just another woman to conquer. To her, he was just another target to destroy. And as he drew closer to her, without knowing it, he was walking straight into the trap that would bring his entire world crashing down. It started with distance, not the loud kind that comes with fights or slam doors. No. Chuka's distance was quiet, careful, almost polite. He still smiled when Amara spoke, but his eyes didn't reach her anymore. He still came home most nights, but his body arrived before his heart. At first, she told herself it was stress. The economy was hard, business could be unpredictable. But one night, as she folded his shirt, a faint scent caught her. A perfume that wasn't hers, neither was it his. Soft, floral, expensive. The kind you wear when you know someone will be close enough to breathe you in. She froze. The shirt dangled in her hands, and for a moment, she couldn't move. Then she laughed. A small, nervous sound that didn't reach her chest. Maybe it's from the dry cleaner, as she whispered to herself. But the next night, when he came home past midnight with a half smile and a phone he wouldn't put down, that excuse no longer fit. Amara tried to talk to him once. She waited until he was seated, scrolling through his phone, and said quietly, "Chuka, are you seeing someone else?" He looked up, not startled, just mildly offended. Where is this coming from? "We are different," she said, voice trembling. "You don't talk to me anymore. You barely sleep here." Chuka cuddled. Chuka chuckled, slow and condescending. "So now because I'm working hard, I'm cheating. Amara, you need to stop letting your imagination run wild." And just like that, the conversation ended. That was Chuka's talent. He could gaslight anyone into silence, even his wife. But something inside Amara shifted that night. She didn't argue again, but she started watching. She noticed the new shirts, the sudden care for how he smelled, the messages that made him smile at his phone, the way he hummed when he dressed, the same tune he used to hum when he was falling in love with her. She didn't know her husband was falling again. Only this time, he was falling into something far darker. Tommy knew exactly what she was doing. She played her role perfectly. Never too eager, never too available. She would text him just enough to stay on his mind, then disappear long enough for him to crave her attention. When they met, she laughed at his jokes, let him feel powerful, and looked at him like he was the most brilliant man alive. Chuka mistook manipulation for admiration, his favorite mistake. He started making excuses to see her. Business meetings, he told Amara, client dinner. But the dinners were with Tommy, candlelit, private, filled with flirtation and lies. What Chuka didn't know was that Tommy had been recording everything. The dinners, the text, the fake investment pitches he bragged about. Arrogance in his voice when he described how easy it was to make women trust him. Every moment, every detail was another nail in his coffin. But something unexpected began to happen. Tommy, who had entered his game for revenge, He started to feel something close to pity. Not for Chika, but for Amara. She saw the woman he was destroying slowly one cold evening at a cafe when she accidentally bumped into her. Amara smiled politely, even though she looked exhausted. Her ring still gleamed, but the hand that wore it trembled slightly as she stirred her drink. And as Tommy walked away from that cafe, one thought lingered. This revenge wasn't just about payback anymore. It was about justice for every woman who had ever been fooled by Chuka Nwobi's charm. And Amara, though she didn't know it yet, was about to become part of that justice. It happened by chance. At least, that's what Amara thought. A women's networking brunch at a small hotel in Victoria Island, all pastel napkins, clinking glasses, and a polite laughter. Tommy was there, radiant as ever, dressed in a simple white dress that made her stand out without trying. She was the kind of woman people noticed. Graceful, confident, the type whose smile carried stories she didn't bother to explain. Amara sat across from her at the long table. They'd been paired for a small group discussion about career and purpose. But soon, their conversation drifted elsewhere, into the quiet parts of womanhood that everyone feels but rarely says out loud. "You are married?" Tommy asked gently, after Amara mentioned her husband in passing. Amara nodded, smiling faintly. 7 years this year. Tommy returned the smile. "That's beautiful. You don't hear that often these days." Amara laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Beautiful, yes, but sometimes tiring. You know how men can be when they get too comfortable." Tommy tilted her head, pretending curiously, though she already knew every detail. "Too comfortable?" "He's different lately," Amara admitted. "Always working, always distant. I try not to overthink it, but..." She stopped herself and shook her head. "Sorry, I didn't mean to dump that on a stranger." "It's fine," Tommy said softly. "You're not the only one." There was a long pause, the kind where two women recognize each other's pain without needing full sentences. They exchanged numbers that day, just for friendship. And over the next few weeks, Tommy slid gently into Amara's life. Lunches here, random checks in there, messages that always arrived when Amara seemed to need them most. "How was your day? Did you eat? Don't forget to rest, love." Simple words. But when your husband barely sees you, kindness can feel like salvation. Amara grew fond of her. There was something easy about Tommy, something warm. She listened without judgment, laughed easily, and always had a way of making Amara feel less foolish for loving a man who no longer tried. Tommy never mentioned Chuka, not once. But each time Amara spoke about him, his absences, his phone calls, his vague business meetings, Tommy took mental notes. Every clue was a breadcrumb leading closer to the evidence she already had. One afternoon, over coffee, Amara's voice cracked. "I just don't understand what changed," she said quietly. "He used to look at me like I was everything. Now it's like I'm invincible." Tommy reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Maybe he's not the man you think he is." Amara was confused. "What do you mean?" Tommy hesitated, just long enough to make it believable. Then she smiled. "Just sometimes men, they surprise us, not always in good ways." There was something in her tone, something that made Amara's heart beat a little faster. A warning, a truth she wasn't ready to face. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what exactly Tommy meant. Outside, the rain fell softly against the window. And beside her, Chuka's phone buzzed. He turned it face down and pretended to be asleep. Amara closed her eyes, pretending to, but deep down, she knew something was coming. Something that would change everything. For weeks, Chuka had been floating. He smiled more, whistled again, dressed sharper than usual, as if a new wind had blown through his life. Amara saw the change, of course. How could she not? But she told herself it was stress relief. Maybe new business partners, or a good deal finally paying off. That's what love does. It explains what it should question. Meanwhile, Tommy had him exactly where she wanted. Their meetings had grown intimate, not just romantic, but confidential. She let him believe she trusted him completely. Shared made-up stories about her uncle in real estate and the offshore investments he was helping her manage. Every detail perfectly rehearsed. Chuka ate it all up. He was used to being the smartest one in the room, the manipulator, not the mark. So when Tommy suggested he come in as a silent partner in a luxury property deal, he barely hesitated. Nothing shady, she said with a reassuring smile. Just an opportunity only a few of us know about. And just like that, Chuka signed. He wired money, a ridiculous amount, into an account Tommy said belonged to the development firm. He didn't even blink, because when a man has lived on deceit long enough, he forgets how to recognize it. Then the silence began. Tommy's reply slowed down. Her usual voice notes turned into short text. Meetings got postponed, and one day, her number stopped connecting completely. At first, Chuka laughed, thought she was testing him. By the second day, he was pacing. By the third, he was calling mutual contacts, except none of them seemed to exist. Emails bounced back. The company website vanished. The lawyer she once mentioned suddenly became untraceable. That was when it hit him. That cold, creeping realization that the hunter had finally been hunted. Meanwhile, Amara sat in the living room that evening, her eyes fixed on her husband as he scrolled through his phone again. Face pale, breathing uneven. For the first time in years, she saw through him. Not the man he pretended to be, but the man he'd always been. Is everything okay? She asked softly. He didn't answer, because how do you tell your wife that you've just been scammed by someone who came to teach you your own game? Chuka didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on nothing, replaying every text, every smile, every conversation with Tommy, looking for the moment he lost control. But there wasn't one. He'd walked right into the trap, grinning. Amara woke up to find him still there in the morning, his phone in hand, his shirt from the night before still on. Chuka, what's going on? She asked. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck. How do you explain to the woman who trusted you that you just lost millions chasing another woman? He just said, work issues. I'll fix it. But Amara knew better now. Something had shifted in her. That quiet intuition women have when love finally runs out of excuses. And then, as if the universe wanted to confirm her worst fears, a message came through that evening from an unknown number. Hello, Amara. My name is Nkem. I think we need to talk about your husband. Her stomach tightened. She almost ignored it until a second message followed, this time with a photo. Chuka laughing at a restaurant with Tommy, and beneath it, another text. You deserve to know the truth. I was one of the women he scammed years ago. Tommy works with me now. We're not here to hurt you, but it's time you saw who your husband really is. Amara's hands shook. Not from shock, but from something deeper: relief, clarity, anger. She met them 2 days later at a quiet cafe in Ikeja. Tommy was calm, her confidence almost disarming. Nkem, older, carried a quiet bitterness that didn't need words. He showed Amara the evidence: transfers, voice notes, old messages, and photos of other women. Every lie she had ever swallowed laid bare on a tablet screen. When it was over, Tommy looked at her and said softly, "We can make him answer for what he's done, but we want you to decide how." For the first time in her life, Amara didn't cry. She sat back, took a deep breath, and smiled faintly. "He built his wealth on broken women," she said. "Let's see how he handles being broken by the women he underestimated." And with that, the real plan began. One that would hit Chuka where he never expected: his reputation, his business, and his pride. It started small. That's how the best revenge stories do. A missing document here, a delayed payment there, a rumor whispered in the right circles. At first, Chuka thought it was coincidence. Then he thought it was bad luck. By the time he realized it was war, it was already too late. Nkem and Tommy had done their homework. They knew every crack in his empire, every investor he had scammed, every fake deal he'd brokered under shell companies, every woman whose money had quietly disappeared under his name. And Amara, she gave them access. She knew where he kept his files, his passwords, his bank statement, and all the things a trusting wife remembers without realizing it. In one night, his empire was stripped bare and laid open. Emails went out anonymously to former clients, regulators, and journalists. Screenshots, voice notes, account details, everything. Within a week, Chuka's name was everywhere. Popular businessman accused of romance fraud. Victims speak. "He told me we were getting married." His phone wouldn't stop ringing, first from investors, then from lawyers, to his family, then from the police. He tried to control the story, tried to reach out to Tommy, but every attempt met a dead end. The women he had once charmed were now united, and they wanted blood. At home, Amara watched it unfold quietly. No tears this time, just a strange calm. When the police finally came for him, he was still insisting it was a misunderstanding, that he would fix it, that it was all lies. But lies are funny things. They don't vanish when you're caught. They just sit there, waiting for the owner to drown in them. The last thing Chuka saw as he was led out of the house was Amara standing by the doorway. No anger, no pity, just peace. Sometimes justice doesn't need noise. Sometimes it comes softly in the form of a woman who finally chooses herself. So family, this brings us to the end of this beautiful story. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Do you think Amara did the right thing? What would you do if you were in Amara's situation? Until next time, bye family!